This is a production. Drill TV.
Once upon a time in a world of magic, light, and darkness. The boat glided silently down the Jinnit River, its wooden hull cutting through the still waters like a knife. Mist rose from the surface, swirling around the vessel and cloaking it in an ethereal shroud as it drifted toward the village of Sabran. The passengers were a diverse group, each with their own story, their own reason for making this journey. A widow sat near the bow, her 2 young children huddled close to her side. She held them protectively, her eyes scanning the riverbanks as if searching for a future she could barely grasp. Beside her, a young man sat with his hands folded, the roughness of his palms betraying his trade. He was a blacksmith, hopeful for the opportunities that awaited him in Sabran, where he could hone his craft and build a life for himself. An old woman, wrapped in layers of faded cloth, sat near the middle of the boat. A gossam, a creature with the body of a goat but the eyes and horns of a deer, stood at her feet, its ears twitching as it chewed contentedly on a piece of straw. The woman patted its head absent-mindedly, her eyes fixed on the horizon, lost in thoughts of days long past. Toward the stern, 2 young women sat apart from the others, each with a sword resting against their knee. One was short and stocky, her dark hair tied back in a tight bun. She wore a red outfit that seemed almost too big for her small frame, her eyes bright with determination. The other was lean and tall, her dark hair falling to her shoulders in loose waves. Her expression was distant, her eyes clouded with a sadness that seemed too heavy for her young years. The boat's passengers were drawn to the lively old man who sat at the center, his voice carrying over the gentle lapping of the water. He held court among them, weaving tales of the past with a voice that trembled with the weight of history. Once upon a time, he began, his eyes twinkling with the joy of storytelling. The world was filled with beings unlike any we know today. They were the Eternals, ageless and wise, their lifespans stretching over millennia. And then there were the Shadows, beings whose blood glowed beneath their skin, and whose powers could shape the very fabric of reality. The passengers leaned in, captivated by the old man's words. The widow's children, their eyes wide with wonder, clung to their mother's skirts as he continued. The Eternals and the Shadows lived side by side, but their differences bred fear and mistrust. For centuries they waged war, devastating the world around them. But then the prophetess Hyga spoke of a vision, a prophecy that foretold of a shadow born with black-colored blood who would cover the world in darkness under his rule. A murmur of unease rippled through the listeners. The old man nodded gravely, his voice dropping to a near whisper. This prophecy led to an uneasy peace. Many kingdoms of men welcomed the truce between the Eternals and the Shadows, hoping it would bring stability. But the peace was fragile and did not last. His eyes grew distant, as if he were seeing the events unfold before him. In a small village, 3 shadows were born on the same night to 3 different mothers. Milu, with purple blood that shimmered like amethyst. Sanuke, whose orange blood glowed like the setting sun, and the one who would become known as the Taba Obi, whose black blood was a harbinger of doom. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Their births were hidden from the world, but such secrets cannot stay hidden forever. When their existence was discovered in their young adulthood, the villagers turned on them. The village was pillaged and destroyed, the trio barely escaping with their lives. The passengers were silent, hanging on his every word as he continued, his voice filled with the sorrow of the tale. For nearly a century they fled, hunted wherever they went. But Taba Obi, the Black Shadow, was unyielding. He proclaimed that the world would soon know his vengeance, that its time was running out.
The old man's eyes flashed with a strange intensity. They sought refuge with the Eternals, whose majestic castles were built from the ancient Edenwald trees. These trees were magnificent, towering giants with roots that reached deep into the earth. The Eternals lived there, far above the petty concerns of men and shadows. But even they could not ignore the plight of the 3. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Taba Obi and Sanuke asked the Eternals to take Milu in to protect her from the fate that awaited them. But they did not ask for themselves. No, they had a different path to follow, a dark purpose that would soon shake the world to its core. The passengers were spellbound, their gazes fixed on the old man as he spoke. But before he could continue, the old woman's gossamer suddenly sprang to life, its ears flicking forward as it lunged at the storyteller, nipping playfully at his legs. The old man yelped, nearly toppling from his seat as he swatted at the creature, laughter erupting from the gathered crowd. Even the widow's children giggled, their mother smiling for the first time since they had boarded the boat. The blacksmith grinned, shaking his head, while the old woman scolded the gossamer, her voice a mix of annoyance and affection.
But not everyone was laughing. The tall, lean duelist student, her shoulders hunched, wiped at her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. She turned away, her body shaking with silent sobs. The shorter student, dressed in red, noticing her distress, moved closer, her voice soft with concern.
Are you all right? Did the story upset you?
The taller woman shook her head, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand.
No. My parents and my little brother. They were killed in the village of Kwasnar.
The boat fell silent, the passengers exchanging uneasy glances. The young woman in red leaned closer, her eyes wide with sympathy.
I'm so sorry. What happened?
The taller woman took a deep, shuddering breath, her voice trembling with grief.
Katner Gars happened, that monster. He slaughtered them all. I was away, training for the academy. And now, they're gone.
She pulled a set of documents from her bag, the papers crumpled and worn.
They worked so hard for this. They wanted me to have a chance to make something of myself. And now, they're gone.
The young woman in red squeezed her shoulder gently, her eyes filled with determination.
Then don't waste it. You can't let their sacrifice be in vain. You have to keep going for them.
The taller woman looked up, her eyes searching the shorter woman's face.
You're right. I have to keep going for them.
The young woman in red smiled, holding out her hand.
I'm Mesu. Let's help each other out, okay?
The taller woman hesitated, then took her hand, a small, tentative smile forming on her lips.
I'm Chica, and yes, let's help each other.
The boat continued its journey down the Jinnet River, the passengers falling into a thoughtful silence as the village of Sabran loomed in the distance, the morning sun casting a golden light over the water. The shadows of the past still lingered, but for the first time in a long while, there was a glimmer of hope, a promise of new beginnings.
Once upon a time in a world of magic, light, and darkness.
The city of Nykamos, capital of the kingdom of Rios, was in turmoil. The once bustling market square was now a scene of chaos and fear. Stalls lay abandoned, fruits and vegetables strewn across the cobblestone streets, and a crowd of onlookers stood frozen in shock and terror, their eyes fixed on the scene at the center of the square. Milos, chief of the city sentry, made his way through the crowd, his lieutenants trailing close behind, their faces pale with anxiety.
Sir, please reconsider!
We should wait for the duelist from the Order of the Light. Slask is dangerous, and we can't risk. There's no time. Milos cut him off, his voice hard and unyielding. Slask has Prince Taka. If we wait any longer, who knows what he'll do? The lieutenant fell silent, his eyes filled with worry as Milos pushed his way forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The square opened before them, revealing the source of the commotion. Slask, the bandit king's brother, stood in the middle of the square, his broad frame towering over the kneeling figure of Prince Taka. The young prince, barely 12 years old, had his arms bound behind his back, a knife pressed against his throat by one of Slask's men. Despite his situation, Prince Taka's face was a mask of calm resignation, his eyes focused on some distant point beyond the crowd. Slask's deep, mocking laughter echoed through the square as he glanced around at the assembled townsfolk. The longer you make me wait, he sneered, the worse it will be for your precious prince! He leaned down, his breath hot against the boy's ear. How much longer do you think they'll make you suffer, little prince? Enough! Milo shouted, his voice ringing out over the noise of the crowd! He stepped forward, his hand tightening around the hilt of his sword as he faced Slask. Release the prince, Slask. This has gone far enough. Slask straightened, his eyes gleaming with amusement as he regarded the chief of the sentry. Oh, how brave, he taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. You think you can give me orders, sentry dog? You think I'll just hand over the prince because you asked nicely? Milos forced himself to remain calm, though every instinct screamed at him to draw his sword and cut the bandit down where he stood. You said you wanted a duel. I'm here to answer your challenge. Let the prince go, and we can settle this. Slask barked out a harsh laugh, his eyes narrowing with disdain. You think I'd waste my time dueling with the likes of you? I demanded a duelist from the Order of the Light, someone worthy of the Bandit King's name. He drew his sword, the blade gleaming wickedly in the morning sun, and pointed it toward Prince Taka. Or perhaps I should take an ear while I wait. It seems you don't value the prince's life very much.
The crowd gasped, and Prince Taka closed his eyes, bracing himself as the blade moved closer to his ear. Milos took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. But before he could speak, a clear, commanding voice rang out from the edge of the square.
Stop!
The crowd parted as a woman made her way forward, her long brown hair tied back in an intricate braid. She wore the distinctive garb of the Order of the Light, and at her side hung a thin, elegant sword. Her eyes, a striking shade of amethyst, locked onto Slask with a gaze as sharp as any blade. "Who are you?" Slask commanded, his grip tightening on his sword as he looked her over. "I asked for a duelist, not some pretty little plaything." The woman bowed her head slightly, her expression calm and composed.
My apologies for the delay. I am Alyssa, head official duelist for the Order of the Light.
A murmur rippled through the crowd, whispers of astonishment and disbelief spreading like wildfire. Alyssa, the head official duelist of the Order of the Light, the champion of the last world dueling tournament here in Nikomos. Milos felt a surge of relief and awe as he looked at her. He had heard stories of Alyssa's skill, of her unparalleled mastery of the blade, but he had never imagined he would see her in person. He stepped back, giving her the space she needed, his heart pounding with a strange mix of hope and trepidation. Zlask eyed her, a sneer curling his lips as he looked her up and down. You're the greatest duelist on the planet? I bet you won that tournament because everyone went easy on you. But I won't. If you face me, you'll get seriously injured, or worse. Alyssa's gaze never wavered as she met his eyes.
I accept your challenge, but you must release the prince, no matter the outcome of the duel.
Zlask's sneer deepened, but he shrugged as if the matter were of no consequence. Fine, I'm a man of my word after all. He grinned down at the prince, his eyes gleaming with malice. But you won't be around to see him go free. He stepped back, raising his sword and facing Alyssa with a confident smirk. Let's see if you're worth the reputation.
The crowd held its breath as the two faced off, the tension in the square so thick it was almost palpable. Milos watched, his heart in his throat, as Lask charged forward, his sword slicing through the air with deadly speed. But Alyssa was faster. With a fluid grace that seemed almost effortless, she sidestepped his attack, her own blade flashing out in a blur of silver. Zlask let out a cry of pain as her sword sliced through his thigh, sending him stumbling to one knee. Before he could recover, Alyssa spun, her blade slicing cleanly across his torso in a precise, controlled strike. Zlask's eyes widened in shock and pain as he collapsed to the ground, his breath coming in ragged gasps. No. This can't be. He choked out, his hand clutching at the wound in his side as blood pooled around him. Milos barely had time to register what had happened before. Three of Zlask's men shouted in rage, drawing their weapons and charging at Alyssa with wild, desperate cries of revenge. He moved to draw his own sword, but Alyssa was already in motion. With a series of swift, decisive movements, she ducked under their attacks, her blade moving with deadly precision. In a matter of moments, all three men lay dead at her feet, their bodies crumpling to the ground as the crowd erupted in cheers. Alyssa stood over them, her expression calm and composed as she cleaned her blade. She sheathed her sword and turned to Prince Taka, her eyes softening as she knelt beside him, cutting his bonds with a swift, deft motion.
Your Highness. Prince Taka shook his head, his eyes wide with awe and perhaps a hint of infatuation as he looked up at his savior. And no, I'm fine, he stammered, his cheeks flushing slightly. Alyssa smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from his face. You were very brave. Milos and his men moved in to secure the scene, their expressions a mixture of relief and admiration as they looked at Alyssa. Slask lay on the ground, his face twisted with pain and hatred as he struggled to lift his head. You'll pay for this. My brother will have his revenge. Alyssa regarded him with a calm, almost pitying gaze. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small scroll, unfurling it with a practiced motion. I offer you the last rites, to find peace in the afterlife. Do you accept? Slask's eyes narrowed, his lips moving as if to respond, but before he could speak, his body went limp, his breath rattling in his throat as he died. Alyssa bowed her head, murmuring a quiet prayer as she closed the scroll and tucked it away. She rose to her feet, turning to Milos, who stepped forward, his face etched with gratitude. Thank you. You saved the prince and all of us. Your skill, it's beyond words. Alyssa inclined her head, her expression solemn. I did what needed to be done, but I failed. I wasn't able to save their souls before it was too late. Milo shook his head. You saved the prince, and that's what matters. Please, stay and let us show our gratitude. But Alyssa shook her head, a distant look in her eyes. I must return to the Order of the Light. There is much to report. She glanced at Prince Taka, her gaze softening. Be safe, Your Highness. With that, she turned and walked away, the crowd parting before her as she made her way through the square. The people watched her go, their hearts filled with a strange mixture of awe and sorrow as the great duelist disappeared into the morning light.
once upon a time in a world of magic, light, and darkness.
The city of Lumina gleamed under the midday sun. Its pristine white walls, the light in a dazzling display that could be seen for miles around. As the holy city, it stood as a beacon of hope and guidance, its towering spires piercing the sky like the swords of the righteous. At its heart lay the headquarters of the Order of the Light, a sprawling complex of grand halls, courtyards, and training grounds where the most skilled duelists and magic wielders in the world honed their abilities in service of the great God and the almighty light. Within one of the complex's vast courtyards, a young boy trained with his sword, his movements precise and fluid despite the weight of the blade. His light brown hair, tied back in a simple tail, swayed with each motion, and his blue eyes were narrowed in concentration as he swung the weapon in a series of intricate patterns. His warrior garb, emblazoned with the insignia of the order, was soaked with sweat. But he paid no mind to the heat of the fatigue gnawing at his muscles. Standing a few paces away, watching with a critical eye, was Gun Vaisol, one of the senior instructors of the order. His skin was tanned from years spent under the sun, and a neatly trimmed beard framed his patient-haired expression. Clad in the deep blue robes of the Order's teachers, he exuded an aura of calm authority. He nodded in approval as the boy completed the sequence, his sword slicing through the air with a sharp, clean sound. "Good," Gon said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. "Very good, protégé. But remember, it is not enough to master the blade alone. You must learn to imbue it with the energy of the elements, to let the light of the great God flow through you and into your weapon." The protégé, breathing heavily, nodded. He raised his sword again, his brow furrowed in concentration. Gon stepped closer, his eyes sharp as he watched the boy's movements. "Focus," Gon instructed, his tone firm but encouraging. "Feel the energy within you, summon the flames of your spirit." The protégé took a deep breath, his eyes closing for a moment. When he opened them, there was a new intensity in his gaze. He swung the sword, and as he did, flames erupted along the blade, crackling with a fierce, fiery light. Gon smiled, a rare expression of pride crossing his features. "Excellent, now the lightning." The boy shifted his stance, his focus unwavering. The flames dissipated, replaced by a surge of electricity that danced along the edge of the blade, sparks leaping from the steel with a sharp, crackling sound. "Good, good," Gon murmured, nodding approvingly. "And now the frost." The protégé hesitated for only a moment before the blade shifted once more. Its surface now coated in a thin layer of ice that shimmered in the sunlight. A chill emanated from the weapon, the air around them growing colder as the boy held the pose, his eyes locked on Gon's. Gon Vizol's smile widened. "Very well done, protégé. You are progressing faster than I had anticipated." He paused, his expression becoming more serious. "But now let us test your adaptability." He drew his own sword, a weapon that seemed to hum with a quiet, restrained power. "I will call out the elements, and you will match them. But be quick, for in battle, hesitation can be the difference between life and death." The protege noted, his grip tightening on the hilt of his sword as he faced his instructor. Gunn stepped forward, his stance shifting into that of a seasoned duelist. He swung his blade in a wide arc, calling out, "Fire!" The protege's sword flared with flames, meeting Gon's attack in a clash of heat and sparks. Gon stepped back, his voice calm as he called out again, "Lightning!" The boy reacted instantly. The flames extinguished as the blade crackled with electricity. He parried Gon's strike, the air between them humming with the energy of their clashing weapons. Frost! Gon shouted, his sword now glowing with a cold, pale light. The protege's blade shifted, the icy surface forming just in time to block the instructor's next blow. They moved like this for several minutes, their swords flashing with different elements as they tested each other's speed and control. Finally, Gon stepped back, lowering his sword and nodding with satisfaction. "Enough," he said, his voice filled with approval. "You have done well, protege. Very well." The boy lowered his weapon, his chest heaving as he tried to catch his breath. He wiped the sweat from his brow, his eyes bright with the thrill of the exercise. "Thank you, Instructor Weisel." Gon clapped a hand on his shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. "You are progressing faster than any student I have ever taught. Soon, we will no longer need to call out the changes. You will sense them, feel them, and your blade will respond without thought." They moved to the side of the courtyard, where a small table held a pitcher of water and several cups. Gon poured 2 cups, handing one to the boy before taking a long drink from his own. "You must remember," Gon said, his tone thoughtful, "that in a real battle, there will be no one to call out the changes for you. Your opponents will not give you the courtesy of announcing their intentions. You must be ready for anything, to adapt and respond with the speed and precision you have shown today." The protege nodded, his gaze thoughtful as he sipped the water. "I understand, Instructor Weisel, but why doesn't the Cassitan help with my training? I heard he was sent to deal with Katnar Gars and that he's one of the best duelists in the Order." Gon Vizzle chuckled, a wry smile playing on his lips. "The Cassitan is many things, but he is not your instructor, nor will he ever be. He has his own duties and his own methods, and as for his abilities," he waved a hand dismissively, "he is skilled, yes, but he is not invincible. And besides, the Cassitan is forbidden from instructing anyone. If he ever tries to teach you magic or dueling, you must inform me or Majaharan immediately. It is strictly against the rules."
The protege frowned, looking down at his cup. "But how can I ever surpass him then, How can I take on the most dangerous missions if I can't learn from him? Gon's expression softened, and he reached out to place a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. There is no surpassing in the order of the light, only serving. We serve the great God, the true justice, and the almighty light. It is not about being the best. It is about being the best servant of the light that you can be. The boy looked up at him, his eyes still filled with uncertainty. Gon's smile widened, his voice taking on a gentler tone. But do not despair, protege. You have more potential than any student I have ever seen. With my guidance, you will become the greatest officer the Order of the Light has ever known. You will achieve glory beyond your wildest dreams. The boy's eyes lit up, hope and excitement shining in his gaze. You really think so, Instructor Weisel? Gon nodded, his expression confident. I know so. Just trust in me. Follow my teachings. And one day, you will be the one who others look to for guidance and protection. You will be the one who stands in the light, unafraid and unshaken. The protege smiled, a sense of determination settling over him. Thank you, Instructor Weisel. I won't let you down. Gon clapped him on the shoulder once more before stepping back. I know you won't, protege. Now, rest for a while, you've earned it. I have meetings to attend, but we will continue your training soon. The protege nodded, watching as Gon Vizol turned and made his way across the courtyard. His robes fluttering in the breeze as he disappeared through the archway. The boy looked down at his sword, his mind swirling with thoughts of the future. He would become the greatest officer in the Order of the Light. He would serve the great God, true justice, and the almighty light. And maybe, just maybe, he would one day stand as an equal to the Cassitan. But for now, he would rest and prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. Once upon a time in a world of magic, light, and darkness.
Majaharan stood at the window of her chamber, her eyes fixed on the sprawling city of Lumina below. The sunlight streamed through the massive glass panes, casting a halo around her figure, making her appear almost ethereal. Her fine, pale skin glowed softly in the light, and her golden hair cascaded around her shoulders like a river of molten gold. The elegant robes of the Order of the Light adorned her form, symbols and insignia embroidered in shimmering threads that caught the light with every movement she made. She watched with a calculating gaze as a figure in the distance made his way toward the gates of the headquarters, his presence unmistakable even from this height. The Cassitan she allowed herself a small, knowing smile, her mind working swiftly as she calculated the time it would take for him to traverse the immense complex and arrive at her chamber. Half an hour, she murmured to herself, her voice barely a whisper in the quiet room, no more, no less. Behind her, a quiet voice broke the silence, tentative and respectful. Is it true? Is the Cassitan really here? Majaharan turned slowly, her gaze falling upon Alyssa, who stood near the entrance to the chamber, her posture a mixture of formality and nervousness. The duelist amethyst eyes were wide, a flicker of uncertainty in their depths. Alyssa's long brown hair was tied back in a complex braid, and her attire, the garb of the Order of the Light, was immaculate, every detail in place as befitted one of her rank. Majaharan did not answer Alyssa's question. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her expression enigmatic as she regarded the young duelist. How did things go in Nikamus? She asked, her voice as calm and smooth as the surface of a still pond. Elisa straightened, her face flushing slightly as she performed official salutes and greetings, bowing deeply to Majaharan. Majaharan, supreme leader of the Order of the Light, she began formally, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. I arrived in Nikamus just in time, though the journey was fraught with delays. I engaged Slask, the brother of the bandit king, in a duel and cut him down. Her voice faltered slightly as she continued, her gaze dropping to the floor. Then his men attacked. I managed to defeat them and free Prince Taka from his bonds. I tried to perform the last rites for Slask, but he died before I could complete them. She looked up, her eyes filled with remorse. I'm sorry, Majaharan, I failed to perform up to standard. Majaharan's expression softened as she watched Alyssa, the weight of the young woman's self-imposed guilt clear in the way her shoulders slumped ever so slightly. With a gentle motion, she beckoned Alyssa to come closer to the window. Alyssa obeyed, stepping forward hesitantly until she stood beside Majaharan, her gaze flicking nervously between the Supreme Leader and the view outside. "Look out at the world before you," Majaharan said softly, her voice filled with a quiet intensity. "The sky, the forest, the mountains, it appears so peaceful, doesn't it?" Alyssa nodded slowly, her eyes following Majaharan's gaze. The view was indeed breathtaking. The sky was a brilliant shade of blue, the lush gore-ribbed forest a patchwork of greens and yellows stretching out like a living tapestry. In the distance, the hinged mountains rose majestically, their snow-capped peaks glistening in the sunlight, symbols of stability and strength. "Yes, Majaharan," Alyssa replied quietly. "It's beautiful." Majaharan's lips curved into a faint, almost wistful smile. "Yes, it is. But beauty can be deceptive, can't it? In the forest, creatures are falling prey to men and to larger beasts. In the mountains, conditions are harsh and unforgiving, claiming the lives of those who are not strong enough to endure. And the sky." Her gaze turned distant, her voice tinged with a sadness that seemed to come from some deep, unspoken place. "The sky will turn many colors before it becomes dark and dotted with stars, and tomorrow it may be crimson with the blood that has been spilled during the night." Alyssa felt a shiver run down her spine at Majaharan's words, her heart tightening with an emotion she couldn't quite name. She glanced at the Supreme Leader, trying to read the emotions behind those translucent, glass blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. Majaharan turned to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "The halls of this complex are full of students training hard, scholars and officials working tirelessly, sacrificing their very lives to serve the great God and the almighty light. Everything has its place, and not everything is perfect. You, Alyssa, are no exception, but you did what you were sent to do. You did your duty." Alyssa fidgeted slightly, the weight of Majaharan's gaze almost unbearable. She had always found the Supreme Leader's presence overwhelming, not knowing whether she was being given a lesson in wisdom or being set up for a reprimand. But the touch on her shoulder was warm, and the words, though firm, were kind. "I understand your regret about the last rites," Majaharan continued, her voice softening. "If it burdens your conscience, then commit yourself to studying the rites. Learn them by heart so that you are not bound to the scroll. Your reliance on it shows not a lack of skill, but a lack of faith in yourself. You are the greatest duelist alive on this planet, Alyssa. But even so, you still do not believe fully in yourself. Alyssa's breath hitched at Marjaharan's words, the compliment striking a chord deep within her. She had never thought of herself that way, never dared to see herself as anything but a servant of the light, striving for perfection, but always falling short. I know there are those greater than me, Marjaharan, Alyssa said softly, her voice trembling slightly. I'm not comparing myself to them, but I have high standards for myself. I want to be equal to them. Marjaharan's frown was almost imperceptible, a mere flicker of emotion across her serene face. Even if you were to become equal to the one who haunts your heart and dreams, it would not give you what you seek. The words hit Alyssa like a physical blow, and she bit her lip, forcing herself to remain composed. She had never spoken of it openly, but Marjaharan knew, she always knew. Alyssa nodded, accepting the admonishment with as much grace as she could muster. Thank you, Marjaharan, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I will think about what you have said. Marjaharan looked up suddenly, her gaze turning toward the door, as if sensing someone approaching. She smiled warmly at Alyssa, the tension in the room easing like the passing of a storm. You did well, Alyssa, she said gently. You have nothing to apologize for. Now go and take some time for yourself, and when you see Gonvaisol in the hallway, tell him I am ready for him. Alyssa blinked in surprise, taken aback by the sudden change in Marjaharan's demeanor. She bowed deeply. Thank you, Marjaharan, I will. She made the official salutes once more and turned to leave. As she stepped into the hallway, she spotted Gonvaisol approaching, his stride purposeful and his expression focused. Alyssa, he greeted her with a nod and a warm smile. I heard about what happened in Nikamas, well done. Alyssa returned his smile politely, but with a touch of confusion in her expression. Thank you, Gonvaisol, but how did you know what happened? Gonvaisol's eyes twinkled mischievously as he gave a small, enigmatic shrug. I have my ways. Alyssa nodded politely. Marjaharan is ready for you. Gonvaisol nodded, his expression becoming serious once more. I won't keep her waiting then. They bowed to each other respectfully, and as Alyssa walked away, her heart began to pound for something that lay ahead in the hallways. She hoped they did, at least.
Once upon a time in a world of magic, light, and darkness.
The Cassitan's footsteps echoed softly through the grand corridors of the Order of the Light's headquarters in Lumina. The towering walls adorned with intricate tapestries depicting the history of the Order seemed to close in around him as he walked, his mind racing with thoughts of the upcoming meeting. He knew he had to time this carefully. A premature encounter could disrupt everything, but after he had reported to Majaharan and Gonvaisol, he could assess the mood and gauge how close the scrutiny was. The complex was massive, a sprawling testament to the Order's influence and power. It would take him roughly half an hour to navigate the labyrinthine hallways and reach Majaharan's chambers. He hoped it would be enough time to avoid the potential encounter he dreaded. As he approached the grand entrance of the Supreme Leader's chambers, the Cassitan took a deep breath, steadying himself. The doors swung open with a soft creak, revealing the opulent room beyond. Majaharan stood by the tall window, her golden hair catching the sunlight that streamed in, creating a halo around her regal form. She turned to face him, a bemused smile playing on her lips. "Half an hour exactly," she observed, her voice carrying a note of amusement. The Cassitan bowed deeply, executing the official greetings and salute with practiced precision. "Majaharan," he said respectfully before turning to acknowledge Gonvaisol, who was standing off to the side, his eyes sharp and piercing. Gonvaisol. The tension in the room was palpable. It was clear that some discussion had taken place before his arrival, one that had raised the pressure in the air. Majaharan's serene demeanor contrasted sharply with the intensity in Vizol's eyes. Majaharan's smile faded slightly as she regarded the Cassitan. "I sensed Katnar Gaz's soul leaving this world during your duel. I must admit, I was astonished that you managed to get him to accept the last rites." Gonvaisol's eyes widened in surprise, his gaze snapping to the Cassitan. "Is this true?" The Cassitan nodded, offering Majaharan a respectful bow. "Your perception is as keen as ever." Majaharan: "Yes, I persuaded Katnar guards to accept the last rites before he passed. I simply showed him how the sacred scriptures of both the Order of the Light and the Order of the Darkness align on this matter, that they fit one to the other." Gonvazol's eyes narrowed, suspicion clouding his features. "The scriptures of the Order of the Darkness in alignment with our own? Are you suggesting they are equal? This sounds dangerously close to blasphemy." Majaharan's eyes flickered between the two men, her expression thoughtful. Perhaps the Cassitan's words are too enthusiastic, but he is not wrong in principle. She paused, then added, "Though, Cassitan, it would be wise to temper your enthusiasm when discussing such matters." The Cassitan inclined his head, acknowledging the reprimand. "Of course, Majaharan, I apologize for any unintended offense. I will work to be more careful in my words and tone."
Gonvizol's lips twitched in a tight smile as he attempted to mask his annoyance. "Regardless, congratulations on the successful mission," he said, his tone clipped before shifting to a more probing one. "But how did the other matter go?" The Cassitan took a measured breath. "As you suspected, Marja Haran, there was indeed a great injustice in Sirendar, stemming from the ancient conflict with Gubash and the Hagaraths. The flawed blessing was misunderstood as a curse, leading to the imprisonment and mistreatment of the Gubashian werewolf." Marja Haran closed her eyes, her brows furrowing in concentration as if seeing something far away. After a moment, she smiled softly. "But you resolved the matter, did you not?" The Cassitan nodded. "I did what I could. I offered the Gubashian and the warriors of Sirendar the chance to be freed from lycanthropy, should they desire it. I also advised them to cease the practice of murdering male visitors to their village." Gonvizol's eyes blazed with anger as he took a step forward. "You offered to free them from lycanthropy. You know there is no known magic to accomplish such a thing. This is reckless beyond comprehension." The Cassitan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I am only aware of the spell. Marja Haran, if I erred in making the offer, I apologize. But now that the offer has been made, I am committed to working with you to learn this spell, should the lycanthropes decide they want it lifted." Vizol's face twisted with fury as he stepped closer to the Cassitan, his voice low and dangerous. "You dare to think that you can master a spell even Marja Haran cannot?" The Cassitan held his ground, his expression calm and unyielding. "I am merely offering to aid in any way I can." Marja Haran's eyes bored into him, searching for any sign of deceit. After a tense moment, she sighed and turned to Gonvizol. "The Cassitan has not broken any rules, Vizol. He has not practiced forbidden magic, nor has he kept anything from us."
Vizol's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists at his sides. And what of his other actions in Sirendar? Did he act on more wild whims and impulses? He moved closer to the Cassitan, his eyes narrowing. Were the beautiful maidens of Sirendar too tempting for a hungry Cassitan to resist? The Cassitan's expression didn't falter as he met Vizol's gaze. Neither I nor Ravni acted inappropriately. Our conduct was, and always will be, beyond reproach. Marja Haran's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Nothing of the sort happened, Gonvizol. I would have known through the emotions of the people and my astral supervision." She turned to the Cassitan, her expression softening. "And there is no need for me to work with him on the spell. I believe he is capable of performing it, should the need arise." Gonvizol looked as if he had been struck, his face flushing with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Majaharan's next words, however, seemed to calm him, if only slightly. Vizal, she said gently, no major creeds, tenets or rules have been broken. No improper or illegal acts have occurred. The Cassitan is still our ally, our arm for justice. Vizal's lips thinned, but he managed a stiff nod. Of course, Majaharan, your wisdom and perception are unmatched. Majaharan turned back to the Cassitan, a faint smile on her lips. You have resolved both the Katnar Gaz mission and the Siren Dar mission admirably. Take some rest, Cassitan. The world will soon place more demands at our feet. The Cassitan bowed deeply. Thank you, Majaharan Gonvizol. He made the official salutes before turning to leave, his steps steady and composed as he exited the chamber. As the doors closed behind him, Vizal turned to Majaharan, his frustration barely contained. How can you trust him so blindly? Majaharan's gaze was serene as she looked out the window, her eyes distant. It is not blind trust, Gunvizor. The Cassitan is who he is for a reason. He is an instrument of the light, just as we all are. Vizal's shoulders slumped slightly, the fight draining out of him. I hope you are right. Majaharan turned to face him, her expression gentle. I am, and so are you. Now let us prepare for what is to come. The world is shifting, and we must be ready.
Once upon a time in a world of magic, light, and darkness.
Lisa sat by the fountain in the courtyard of the Order of the Light's headquarters in Lumina, the gentle splash of water the only sound in the stillness. She stared at the ripples on the surface, trying to find a sense of calm amidst the turmoil in her heart. The courtyard was quiet, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, but her mind was anything but peaceful. She had been so sure she would see him today. The Cassitan had returned to Lumina on the same day she had, and yet somehow she had missed him. She replayed the moment in Maja Haran's office over and over in her mind, wondering how she could have been so close and yet so far. Maja Haran's words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the futility of her longing. I will not get what I seek. Alyssa whispered to herself, repeating Maja Haran's words as if saying them out loud would make them easier to bear. But they only seemed to cut deeper, the truth in them like a knife twisting in her chest. What is it that you seek, but cannot have? The voice was calm, steady, and all too familiar. Alyssa's heart skipped a beat as she turned, and there he was. The Cassitan stood just a few steps away, his presence as commanding and serene as ever. She scrambled to her feet, trying to compose herself and perform the official salute, her movements precise but a little too quick. He returned her salute with a graceful nod, his eyes studying her with a mixture of curiosity and kindness. "Please sit," he said, motioning to the stone bench beside her. "There's no need for formality here." Alyssa hesitated, but then nodded and sat down, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. The Cassitan took a seat as well, a respectable distance away, but close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. "What is it that you seek?" he asked again, his voice gentle, almost coaxing. "You said it was something unattainable." Alyssa swallowed hard, her hands clenching into fists in her lap. She forced herself to take a deep breath to calm the racing of her heart. "It's nothing important," she lied, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I'm just reminding myself to work harder, to improve, to grow." The Cassitan's gaze remained on her, unwavering, as if he could see through the mask she was trying so desperately to maintain. "You're already remarkable, Alyssa, the greatest duelist in the world." His words sent a flush of warmth through her, but she shook her head, looking away. "We both know that's not true," she said softly, her voice tinged with bitterness. "But it is." The Cassitan insisted, his tone firm but kind. "There is no one else in this world who holds that title as you do." Alyssa looked around the courtyard, her eyes darting nervously. "Is there a way we can speak without being overheard?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Either by sound or by other means." The Cassian regarded her for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "You want me to use magic to shield our conversation?" he asked softly, his voice so gentle that it seemed to brush against her like a whisper of wind. Alyssa hesitated, then nodded, her heart in her throat. "I'm just curious if it's possible." For a moment, he seemed to weigh her words, then he murmured something under his breath, a few soft, indistinct words that seemed to melt into the air. Alyssa felt a sudden warmth envelop her, a strange sensation that made her shiver despite the heat. She opened her mouth to ask what was happening, but her voice sounded different, echoing inside her, filling her mind and body, but not escaping into the air around her. "What is this?" she asked, her voice resonating through her very being. Cassian's voice followed, a soft, intimate whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I'm showing you that what you asked is possible. This is just a demonstration. Anything you say now will remain between us. No one will be able to hear it. No one will be able to sense it." Alyssa's heart pounded even harder, the sensation overwhelming. She turned to face him, trying to catch his eyes, but he was looking away, his expression distant, as if to give her the space she needed. She struggled to find the words to say what had been burning inside her for so long. But then he spoke again, his voice even softer, almost a caress. "Remember, Alyssa, whatever you take away from this conversation, whatever you carry with you can be read by those who know how. Consider this carefully, even for a demonstration." Alyssa bit her lip, his words pulling her back from the precipice she had been so close to jumping off of. She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I know you're the true greatest duelist in the world," she said, her voice trembling but clear in the strange, intimate silence that surrounded them. "You won the tournament that was voided, sealed from the records, because you're a Cassian, and they couldn't acknowledge that a Cassian won. All the past Cassian winners were erased from history. I know this." She hesitated, the weight of her confession pressing down on her. "I appreciate your kind words, but I'm not ignorant. I know you're the greatest duelist alive, and I want..." Her voice faltered, her heart feeling as if it would burst. "I want your instruction, your training, so I can become a better duelist." The Cassian sighed, the sound vibrating through her like a melancholy note in a beautiful song. "You're mistaken, Alyssa," he said gently. "A Cassian could never be the best duelist in the world, and I could never train you or anyone else. It would be unthinkable, offensive even, to suggest such a thing. You are the greatest duelist, That is your role in the order of the light. She started to protest, but he continued, his voice a soft, insistent murmur that wrapped around her like a cocoon. We all have our roles to play, Alyssa. They're all valuable, all necessary for the will of the great God and the almighty light. We are all instruments in their hands. Don't underestimate what you represent, what you mean to the order. His voice grew softer, his words almost brushing against her thoughts, her soul. Sometimes a little theater helps to keep the peace. Don't try to step off the stage, Alyssa. The world needs you. Everyone needs you. He hesitated, and then his next words were so soft, so intimate, that they sent a shiver down her spine. I need you. The magic ended abruptly. The sounds and sensations of the world crashing back in around her. Alyssa blinked, startled by the sudden return of noise and light. She glanced at the Cassidan, her heart a wild, chaotic mess inside her chest. But he was calm, composed, his expression serene as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. How are the students progressing in their training? He asked casually, his tone light and conversational. The change of topic was a lifeline, something for her to grasp onto as she struggled to rein in her emotions. They're doing well, she managed, her voice steadying as she focused on the familiar topic. The prototag is progressing beyond all expectations. His skill is already so high, he could probably handle missions now, though he needs more experience. The Cassidan nodded thoughtfully. You and Gon Vizzle have done excellent work with them. They're lucky to have you as their instructor. Alyssa felt a flush of pride at his words, but she quickly pushed it aside, nodding her thanks. Thank you, sir. He stood then, and she quickly followed suit, her heart still racing but her face composed. They exchanged the official salutes, their movements precise and formal. Thank you for the conversation, Alyssa, he said, his voice as calm and polite as ever. I must take my leave now. Of course, she replied, bowing slightly. Thank you, sir. He turned and walked away, his steps steady and unhurried. Alyssa watched him go, her heart aching with 1,000 unsaid words. As soon as he was out of sight, she turned and hurried away, her feet carrying her as she fled, one thought echoed in her mind, over and over. He needs me.